Thanks. Can you hear me from here? Yeah. So I have spoken about HPass at some previous conferences, so hopefully I won't be recapping too much. I'm going to aim to go through just a bit of an introduction about what HPass is about, some examples of how it's being used in practice, and then some of the lessons that we're learning. And this is me. I work for, it's huge, isn't it? I work for an organisation called, shall I just move on? I work for an organisation called the Humanitarian Leadership Academy, which is kind of a sub-organisation of Save the Children UK. So we're based out of that office when we're in the office, and HPass is an initiative of that organisation. So, to start, as I mentioned, with just a bit of an overview about HPass. HPass aims to be a skills platform for modern humanitarians who are learning on the job. I guess everybody's learning on the job to some extent, but humanitarians more than anyone, having to pick things up as they go along and react to situations as they arise. So we wanted a platform that would be flexible to recognise different types of skills and experience. They need to upskill regularly because of the changing situations that they work in. They move often between organisations and locations. And I think one of the really critical things about humanitarians, which maybe, depending on where you sit, you might not know, is that most of them, I guess 90% actually, are based in and are from the countries where crises happen. So sometimes sitting here in Europe, we kind of imagine that most humanitarians are sort of flown out and deployed to situations. But that's not necessarily the case. And a lot of people that work and live in areas where crises happen don't have the same opportunities to get their skills recognised as we might. So what is a My HPass profile? So essentially it's an online profile based on the Open Badge passport, enabling somebody to showcase their humanitarian skills and experience using digital badges. Anyone can go on there and set up a profile. And you can earn badges from currently around 30 different organisations. So the aim is that you set up this profile, you keep it as you move between organisations, and you earn badges throughout your career. And so you have this kind of record of all of your learning and development. And so far we've got 24,000 users, which I think is quite good going, but we've still got a long way to go in terms of the sort of overall size of the humanitarian sector. And so in my opinion, and I'm probably not as much of an expert on this as you other guys, but what makes HPass different from other badging initiatives, to me, just from what I've observed, it has more of a global audience. From what I've seen, a lot of badging initiatives have their audiences mostly based in Europe and the US at the moment. And also it's kind of a sector-wide initiative, so it's not based around a particular organisation. It's aiming to bring a whole bunch of organisations within a sector together. And a little bit about our audiences at the moment. So you can see they are very global, lots of representations from the places where crises are happening, and also representation from countries such as Great Britain, the US and France as well. So quite a mixture there. And then our gender breakdown, very male at the moment. We're still not really sure why that is. We have a sense from some people that the sector itself is quite male, but there's not really great data on that. So we're not sure whether that's reflecting the makeup of the sector or whether that's something to do with the way that people access the platform. And this is just to demonstrate that within the humanitarian sector, there's all kinds of different types of roles that people play. So you can see here, this is taken from the State of the Humanitarian Profession report, which was produced by Beerforce, and we've kind of used it as a basis to create these. So you can see a breakdown of all of the thematic professions in the sector and the functional professions. So you get a lot of kind of technical specialists in areas such as water and sanitation, education and emergencies, nutrition and things like that. And then you have also these kind of functional professions that are more kind of like support professions. And in reality, I guess, a lot of people also have roles that are a mixture of those things. So just to give a few examples, these are just a couple of people that are using the platform. So you can see somebody up there, Claudia from Dominican Republic, is a content creator specialist, so she has a very specific role around sort of media and comms in emergencies, and most of her badges kind of reflect that. You've got somebody here who works in program development and management in India. They have quite a sort of wide spanning role, bringing in lots of different thematic areas from the diagrams that I just showed you. And then up here we've got an example of somebody, Annette from Uganda, who's actually not from the humanitarian sector but is looking to get into the sector. So her background is in energy specialism, and she's looking to move into sort of like climate-related humanitarian work. And this is just to give you a sense of the different types of organisations that are using HPass and issuing badges to the platform. So we've got around 30 at the moment, as I said, and there's all sorts of different organisations in there, really. International NGOs, some smaller local NGOs, some sort of private security training providers, and there's a couple of universities in there as well. So, give me some examples. So, I just wanted to give some examples of how, practically speaking, these different organisations are using HPass and what they're issuing badges for. And I'd say that at the moment, most of our organisations, the vast majority, are still using the platform to recognise knowledge. And I think what we're trying to do, really, is take our organisations on a bit of a journey where they can start to think about recognising different things through the platform, taking us back to that original aim of HPass, to recognise also kind of practical experience that people have brought from the field. But I think it's a great starting point for organisations that they have these courses and they want to badge them, and it's a way to sort of bring them into the system and get them thinking about it. So those are just some examples. World Vision's badge for IT and emergencies. Voluntary Services Overseas is a UK-based organisation. We've got a couple of organisations that are using the badging for their sort of compliance, their mandatory training that all of their staff and volunteers need to do. And then on the right-hand side here, we've got SAVE's Child Protection Pathway, which is a free pathway that's available online for anybody to take. So that's where most of our work is sitting at the moment. But we're getting some other interesting examples coming up. So this is the Global Interagency Security Forum. They represent people that work in security risk management from all sorts of different organisations. They bring them together. And they provide these webinars on all kinds of different specialist areas to enable people within that network to keep their skills up to date. So they issue these participation badges. And what's interesting about that is that they've created a situation where you can use these participation badges to contribute towards your security risk management certification. So it's a kind of continuing professional development use for those. And I think that's a nice example of where a participation badge can be really valuable. And then we're also starting to think of different ways that we can recognise behaviours. And I'm sure there's many different ways to go about this, but one that we've just been working on recently is with a company called Gamertecher. And they essentially develop games which enable you not just to learn and to demonstrate what you know, but also to demonstrate what you can do. So within the game, you have the ability to record yourself doing public speaking or join up with a partner and practice your interview skills and get some feedback from the other person. So we're quite interested in this use case because it means that the badge that you get at the end is for something that you've also done as well as something that you actually just know. So we've just launched this recently and we're going to be interested to see what uptake it gets and what feedback we get through that as well. We've got an organisation called Global Buildings Performance Network who are really using their badges to recognise kind of social action. So this is an organisation that works on energy efficiency in the buildings industry. And they have a whole network of people worldwide who are professionals in that. And they are recognising people that have really kind of championed that cause and shared that cause and shared their expertise with other people. And then finally, another example of action is just within Save the Children. We've got these diversity and inclusion representative badges. So this is a huge agenda for Save the Children at the moment. And there's a specific role within the organisation that someone takes on to be a diversity and inclusion representative. So what we're trying to do here is value those people that are making a really useful contribution to their workplace culture and are essentially making their organisations more effective, but in ways that are usually unrecognised. So we're using this as a starting point, and we're hoping to do this on other themes within Save the Children as well. So across all of those organisations, one of the things that we're starting to think about now is how we can kind of build a community of recognition. So we have, as I said, 24,000 users at the moment, so we're just probably getting to the point where we can start thinking about some kind of community activities around that. And then also we have our community of organisations as well. So we're thinking of community in two senses: community of the people that earn the badges and community of the people that issue the badges. So some of the things that we've been up to is that we're trying to make it so that the value of having a HPass profile is more than just the fact that you can earn a badge and stick it on your profile and then hopefully share it. But there's actually a value of almost like being a member of that club as well. So some of the things that we've been doing is thinking about whether we can get discounts from some of our learning providers. Some of our learning providers don't provide free training. They provide it at a fee. So whether they can offer discounts to people that are using HPass. Whether we can provide career guidance as an extra for people that are using HPass. And then just rewarding people that are really kind of championing the platform. So we had, last year we did HPass Learner of the Year, which had pretty good uptake. And this year we're doing one around community champions and learning leaders. And those are literally just people that are sort of sharing what they've learned online, so on social media and things like that. So we're aiming to kind of pull out those champions of the network and use them to pass on what they've learned to other people. And then for organisations, it's very much a case of supporting them to kind of share their practice. So we bring organisations together a couple of times a year for each organisation to present what they're doing. We provide lots of materials for them to use with their target audiences to support them to understand how the badging works. And we generally just try to sort of promote ways for them to collaborate by helping them to understand what each other are doing. And I suppose one example of that is this idea of starting to promote using badges to recognise behaviours and actual experience as opposed to just knowledge. That's something that I think as we start to get some organisations doing it, others will be inspired to follow. So I'll just move on to a few learnings from us. Oh, 5 minutes, that's good, that's fine. So one of them, I suppose, is that for our platform, two of our kind of main purposes are a little bit in tension. So on the one hand, we're hoping in future that our platform will contribute to people being able to be more rapidly recruited and deployed into emergency situations. And that kind of lends itself in a way to kind of standardisation and easy comparability of badges, you know, just to be able to see something, recognise that's the right badge that they've got, deploy them into the situation. On the other hand, we also want to use our platform to be able to recognise all kinds of different experience and to be able to recognise those people that are actually doing most of the kind of frontline work in the sector and don't have the opportunity to be recognised typically. So those two things are a little bit in tension at the moment for us, and it's just something that we're, you know, working our heads around on an ongoing basis. We've got different kind of quality markers on the platform. These are the types of things that you can do with Open Badge Factory. But I think for us at the moment, what we're saying is transparency is key. So we're enabling people to really create badges on any humanitarian topic within the platform and representing any type of experience or participation or knowledge, as long as they're just absolutely transparent within the badge about what that badge represents. You can see here that we do have this HPass certified status, so some of our organisations choose to go through this really rigorous sort of quality assurance process, which we've got, but not all of them at the moment. And then some of the other things that we're using on the platform are the endorsements feature, the ability to align to competency frameworks. There's several competency frameworks that the sector uses, and also the feature of being able to see how popular badges are in general. Yeah, and so another thing we're learning, I think, is about terminology. And I suppose this, in a way, harks back a little bit to, you know, what Doug was saying about keep badges weird and things. You know, and I love all of that stuff personally, but I suppose a lot of the feedback that we get from our user group as well is that for them, they're happier if it's moving towards the left of this page. You know, they want to see things that look serious and look like academic qualifications, and look like, I suppose, in a way, what they feel people that are being deployed from Europe and America, for example, are able to show. You know, they want to have something like that. Despite the fact that their experience might be more valuable, they want to kind of be able to echo that. So the more kind of community-based and open recognition-y and, you know, light-hearted it becomes, the less popular it is with our audience at the moment, I would say. And that's like a big communications piece, I think, for probably all of us working in badging, is to try to explain why it is important to be able to recognise all different types of skills and why our approach is how it is. This is just an example from somebody who's a super keen badging user and is a community champion, but has also said that they would like lovely, more beautiful certificates. Okay, so I'm just on my last couple of bits here. So this is just about who seeks recognition. So this is something that I find quite interesting with, for example, these kind of community champion badges, or the learning leader ones. Quite often, we've found that men are more likely to put themselves forward for claiming a badge, and it might hark back to the fact that we've got more men in the sector, we just don't know, and also are more likely to put themselves forward to be profiled for having got a badge. So if we say, you got a badge, can we use it in our comms? Get all the boys coming back, and then we don't get many females putting themselves forward. Hence comments like this one from Anna. I can't help but notice that all featured gold learners are men. Makes me wonder why that could be. And actually, they weren't all men, the gold learners, but those were just the ones that wanted to be profiled. So that's just quite interesting and something that we're going to be keeping an eye on as well. This point, I think, is something that everybody is grappling with, probably across everyone that works in badging, but that kind of missing piece of how to engage employers is something we're really interested in terms of how eventually we can use badges to help identify the right people to be deployed into situations and things. We're not at the stage where we have a big enough user base yet to necessarily do that. But I think it's just something that we need to continue to think about, and we're sort of starting to talk to some of the big kind of recruiters in the sector about exactly how they operate and how we might support them. One example of something that we're thinking about here is this response-ready pathway. So the idea that we can create a pathway of like absolutely minimum essential knowledge that everybody needs to have in order to be deployed, and that can be used across multiple different organisations. Finally, connectivity. So I guess most of the world's connected now, but we tend to just work in the least connected places. So people in South Sudan, Yemen, have difficulties sometimes accessing things. We're super keen to have kind of maybe an offline version, for example, the HPass app at some point, but we're always thinking about how can we make it accessible to the people that actually are our main target audience. Oh yeah, so this is the final point actually, which is just around champions really. So we've got our 30 organisations, we've got our 24,000 users, and I think within that you're always going to have some people that are super keen and other people that are less, less able to kind of just jump in and take the plunge for something new. So I think it is always just about kind of identifying those people that have the energy to kind of support you to take an initiative forward and working with those people. And I think that's what we've been doing incrementally over the past few years and what we'll continue to do. And I think it's the fact that we have had those people that have contributed to any success at all that we've had so far. That was a strange way to end. Sorry. Right, thanks. Does anyone have any questions?
Maybe we'll take one question as we switch over. Philippe, is it possible you could come up with Lindsay's, bring up Lindsay's presentation? Thank you. Any questions from the audience? Nate.
I wish I could just erase that last bit.
It was really interesting to see that the learners preferred the certificate style of credential that looked more formal than the badge, and I wonder if that's because we do not have very clear paths to actually like turning that badge back into some kind of new opportunity. And you talked about the sort of applicant tracking process, the recruiting process as kind of the big gold standard of thing that you could turn a badge back into is a real job or an opportunity to go into a crisis with a role defined. But I wonder if there are other opportunities for recognition within the community or just like advancing the practices and understanding of who you are and identity. Are you seeing other places where we can make decisions based on the badges that are held by individuals that are at a smaller scale than actually giving them a real job?
That's an interesting question. I feel that somehow in our sector we have this great big agenda called the localization agenda, which is all about a kind of shifting of the power dynamics, I guess, in the sector. Because at the moment only a very small percentage of kind of leadership roles in the humanitarian sector are actually taken by local people that understand the contexts and things. So in a way, I do feel that for our sector somehow actually moving people into new roles, people genuinely changing that power dynamic so that people are able to move into leadership positions is a really big part of it. Having said that, I think there's a lot that can be done, beyond that as well, just with, we have within the sector, when I showed you that kind of wheel of like different thematic areas, for example, all of those, in a way, do also represent a community of practice. And that's not, we haven't necessarily kind of cultivated those thematic communities yet, but I do think there could in future be kind of recognition on that basis as well. And I think a really big part of it is going to be communications as well. I think it's not just about people understanding where a badge can take them in life, but also just understanding different things like the fact that a badge has more information in it than a certificate. A badge is online and everything's moving online. So one day if you want to be found by some kind of search feature or something, this is the way to do it, potentially. But I just think there's not, here we know about digital badges much more than most people in the world. Like, I think most of our people are just coming across it for the very first time. And so I just feel that it's going to just take a lot of perseverance from us to keep on communicating it out is one of the main things.
Okay. Thanks very much, Esther. Great.